therefore install an extension. I can add an extension to Chrome, an extension that understands an RSS feed. And once enabled, if a web page has an RSS feed, then that extension will be able to relate and probably tell me that, look, there is an RSS feed. Would you want me to read and things like that. So the link tag, of course, you can use that in conjunction with CSS. It can also be used to associate an alternate form of content, as in an RSS feed. We're not done yet. In addition, the link tag can also be used to associate something called a shortcut icon with the current document. Just a quick piece of information. Previously, this was called a fave icon or a favorite icon. Now, it is being called a shortcut icon. Let me say that again. Previously, we used to call this a fave icon or a favorite icon. Now, it is being called a shortcut icon. So it's a change in nomenclature. Fave icon is what we previously used to call it. We're now calling it a shortcut icon. That's about what the difference here apparently happens to be. What I would like all of you to do, I'll elaborate on the shortcut icon stuff in just about a minute. But before we do that, I guess everyone would be eager to understand the purpose of this. Why might we even need something like this? So here's what I want all of you to do. Given the fact that we've all downloaded that material that I have shared, you're going to notice there's a folder titled HTML5 material. HTML5 material. Do we see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, in there should be a folder called examples. Okay. I hope there's a folder titled examples. Do we see that? In the examples folder, I would want all of you to please open HTML page 03 in a code editor first. I repeat, HTML page 03 in a code editor, a text editor. Any text editor will do, any editor of your choice. I'm fine by it. HTML page 03. Please note that's the file that I would want all of you to open right now. Open this in a code editor. And just to make sure we're all in sync, I believe this is what we're looking at. Yes, Ravindra?
Yes, we are in sync.
Okay, wonderful.
Hello? Yes, Shweta? Yeah, so I just want to inform that I currently do not have access to the system or the material. I'm actually attending the meeting over mobile. So I may not be able to perform the task, but I'm just trying to understand. Sure, Shweta. Thank you for that update. I guess I'll probably make sure that I bring up the code on my machine so you're able to view and you can possibly relate. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay, so this is the file that I requested all of you to open. A couple of observations which I would want all of you to make. One, of course, we have a link to the CSS file. Frankly, I'm sure everyone would agree there's hardly anything new in there. I then have a link to an alternate form of content as in an RSS feed, which I did make a mention of. And I also have a link to this shortcut icon, which is interesting. Previously, if you recollect, I said this was rather called a fave icon. We used to call it a fave icon previously. We are now calling it a shortcut icon instead. Generally, whenever you open a web page, and possibly on the tab, just beside the title, for that matter, in fact, we could try this right now. On all of your machines, could you please open this file in a browser? HTML page 03. Could you please open this in a web browser on your machines?
In my case here, I have attempted to open this in Chrome. It could be any browser. I'm not compelling you or biasing you in favor of Chrome. Just a browser. A few things that I would like you to have noticed. One, the CSS being applied thanks to that style sheet. You're seeing a color and all of that. So CSS being applied, nothing unusual about it. This page also has an RSS feed. Incidentally, Chrome, as I said previously, happens to be one of those browsers which out of the box does not support an RSS feed. So there is no, nothing here that indicates that this page is associated with an RSS feed. I can have an extension added. And if I do, then that extension will help me decide, or it will help me indicate that, look, there is an RSS feed with this document. At the moment, I don't have anything though. Now, the third usage that I'm referring to is the shortcut icon. If you observe closely here on the tab, just beside the title, there is a small icon that kind of resembles a compass. I hope that is visible, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is what I'm calling as the shortcut icon. Previously, we used to call it a fave icon. Now it is being regarded as a shortcut icon. Now, the question that may cross some of our minds is, oh, why is there a change in nomenclature? Fave icon is what we previously used to call it. Now, if you visited any Google site, you would have seen an icon with a G. Facebook, you would have seen an icon with an F. Or maybe you visit some other corporate site, you're going to see a corresponding icon. So this is basically what was previously termed as a fave icon. Now we are regarding it as a shortcut icon. Okay, now obviously the question remains, why is this firstly being called a shortcut icon? Favorite icon kind of would have made, it was something that we had in use for quite a number of years. What's the need for the shortcut icon? Change in terminology. Here are a couple of simple cases to help you understand why they changed the name. One, these days, many modern platforms, operating systems, allow us to pin an application onto the taskbar. Would you agree? You can pin an
Yes.
application onto the
Yes.
taskbar. So much so that you can even pin a web application onto the taskbar. Just imagine this. You're trying to drag and drop a URL onto the taskbar. It'll work. Now, when you drop a URL onto the taskbar, what would you prefer to see? Would you want to see the icon of the browser, or would you want to see the icon of the application when you do this drag and drop onto the taskbar? I'm sure ideally we'll realize we would want to see the icon of the application. Oh, why? Because maybe today I'm using browser A, tomorrow for some reason I may be compelled to use browser B. Well, I don't want the icon of the browser. I certainly would prefer to have the icon of the application. A shortcut icon, therefore, is going to sound a lot more logical. Further, if let us say I'm viewing this page on a handheld device, and on a lot of these mobile platforms, I hope you're familiar that there is this provision of adding a shortcut to the home screen. Is that something you're aware of? You can add a shortcut to a web page onto the home screen.
Yes.
Right? Now, when you do, the question that arises is, would you want to see a shortcut of the browser, or would you want to see a shortcut of the application concerned? Well, we realize, we would want to see a shortcut of the application concerned. Hence, shortcut icon. Probably for those of us who might not have attempted this, okay, let me see if I can, illustrate this. You probably need to bear with me here. I'm just trying to see if I can actually illustrate this on a device. Kindly bear with me. Okay, I'm just going to try illustrating this. This is on my handheld device, on my phone. And I'm just, let's say arbitrarily, I'm picking up a file. And here, I've got an option which says, okay, I can add this to home screen. There's an option. This is a web page. I'm using Safari on my device. Now, the moment I say add to home screen, notice this is what's going to be added. It's a shortcut. So let's suppose I click on add, and here's what's happened. Now, incidentally, that is a shortcut to a browser-based URL. Now, that's not an app. Okay, that's not an app. When I click on that, when I tap on that, notice it brings me back to this page. I've just picked up an arbitrary page here, though. But this is browser-based. So we're talking about, something that says a shortcut to an application, to a web application in particular, and that is what we proposed to establish. Hence the term shortcut icon. Previously, mind you, we used to call it a fav icon. So, three usages for the link that we have: CSS, of course. We then can have an RSS feed, and we could also have this shortcut icon, or what was previously termed as a fav icon. Three usages for the link that we've currently come across. Let's continue. Now, HTML has previously provided us a number of elements that we could have used, and we have used, in fact, reasonably extensively to structure our document. And these elements may have included forms, lists, and paragraphs. I mean, elements that I could use to structure my document: forms, lists, and paragraphs. In addition to that, HTML version 4 in particular introduced the div and the span respectively. Extremely popular elements. They've gotten popular thanks to some of their characteristics: the div in specific, div as in division. I can use this to demarcate a region in the browser window, in the renderable area, such that I can put my content there. Positioning of content, quite an abundant set of capabilities that these tags have introduced. All said and done, these are elements that have helped us structure our documents. Now, just to take this in a specific perspective, something that every one of us can relate to. If I wanted to create a page layout using some of these tags, here is a usage that I believe is not very uncommon. Let me say that again. This is a usage which is not very uncommon. I hope this is something every one of us can relate to. Mind you, these are tags that I have chosen to use to create a page layout, a template, call it if you want to. I've got a div, ID says header, okay, the header section of the page. Nav, possibly that's where my navigation bar resides. I've got a div which represents an article. An article can comprise of a section or maybe even multiple sections. A div, which is the sidebar, and I've got a section which represents the footer. Now, if you look at it on the face of it, I'm sure you'd agree this is something which is reasonably commonly used. I mean, nothing unusual, looks okay. But apparently, there are a few potential concerns in the context of this implementation. I'll repeat that again. There are a few potential issues in this implementation, in this usage. I'll highlight only two of them for now. Excuse me. What are the possible issues that we may be talking about? Here is the first. I've used a div. I've said ID is header. Question: is header a predefined term? Is header a predefined term in this usage?
No.
I'm sorry, Shweta, I couldn't hear you.
No, it's not a predefined term.
Okay, I believe everyone understands header is not a predefined term, isn't it? Now, the reason why I brought up that question is, imagine this. I have created this layout. A colleague of mine who's probably just sitting adjacent to me has created exactly the same layout. In my case, I have called it header. In this person's case, he or she calls it HDR. Okay, possibly valid. There is another acquaintance of mine who is also working on exactly the same structure, but that person calls it my header. No offense meant here, but there are a lot of people who, prefer to add this my prefix to everything. My header, my nav, my article, And that's a kind of a, should I say, personalization, if I may use the word, but that's something that a lot of people actually prefer doing. As I said, nothing against them, no offense meant, just an observation. So let's imagine this person has done my header as an ID. And then there is a slightly disoriented person, possibly after effects of too much caffeine, is disoriented. He creates a similar layout or similar looking layout structure. And then he says div ID footer at the very top. Mind you, I said he's disoriented. Div ID footer. Now, some of us may wonder, oh, is there a problem? Oh, yes, there is a problem. Imagine a screen reader or an accessibility oriented application looks into each of our documents. In one case, it will see header as the ID. In the second case, it will see HDR. In the third, it would see my header. And in the fourth, it may see footer. Now, the accessibility oriented application is going to be at a loss in terms of being able to understand what this content is or the structure itself per se. In other words, we lose out on access to content because the screen reader is unable to comprehend things properly. That's one of the concerns. And I said I'll just highlight two right now. The second concern, notice in this case, I have a div whose ID is nav. Okay, another quick question. In that div, can I have another div? In the div whose ID is nav, can I have another div? Yes, indeed. Apparently, I can have a div anywhere, so much so that I can put a div within the header, I can put a div within the footer, maybe within the section. Now, this might sound a little, kind of paradoxical. I'll tell you why. I am using divs to create an overall page layout, a structure. And I am also permitted to use divs to be a part of the layout. So if I combine both those statements from a layman's terminology, it is as good as saying, oh, I can use the div for anything and everything in the page, which certainly can lead to a lot of confusion and ambiguity. People using divs all over the page, and let's imagine you don't close one div, our entire layout goes for a toss. If there are far too many number of divs and nested divs and whatnot, our entire layout will be impacted adversely. Now, there have actually been instances which people have encountered and learned things the hard way. Fortunately, HTML5 is attempting to address problems like these and more with the introduction of new structural elements. We now have a new element called header, a new tag, mind you, called header, nav, article, section, aside, and footer. These are element names themselves, which means whether I create a document, you create a document, or 100 other people create documents, HTML documents, of course, the element names are going to remain the same. They are going to remain consistent. Each of these elements can in turn have ID properties with whatever value. That's okay. But we now have a pre-designated set of elements used exclusively to create a page structure, a page layout. Now, mind you, these in turn can have divs, no problem whatsoever, which means there is now a clear demarcation when it comes to the way we would want to structure our document. A quick word of caution, none of these tags have any built-in formatting. I'll say that again, none of these tags have any built-in formatting. Meaning, if you use an element called header, please be aware it would not automatically get aligned to the top of the page. That is something that you would need to do, should you want to. So is the case with footer. So none of these tags have any built-in formatting. All right? These are tags that are primarily used to structure the document. We're not done yet. We also have a few more elements. There's an element called H group, which apparently is something that's not extensively supported yet, but this is an element that we could use to group header tags in a document. Now let's just assume I have a header H2, and right after that I have a header H3. I mean, it's basically like a section title and a subsection title placed adjacent to one another. I could group those header tags with the H group element. It's going to be used to group header tags, as the name should suggest. We then have time as a tag, which unsurprisingly is going to help us mark up dates and times. Speaking of markup, we have a mark tag itself, which is used to highlight content. It's probably going to behave more like a highlighter, so to speak. Again, could all of you please get back to the examples folder? I would want you to open HTML page 05, HTML page 05 in a code editor. HTML page 05 in a code editor. And this is what I believe we're looking at. Okay. Now there is an element called time, as you can observe. Time. It's associated with a property called date time. Date time apparently is accepting a value in a UTC format. Have we heard of UTC? Any idea? UTC?
Yes.
Okay. Any idea what it stands for, Umashankar?
So basically, every country have its own time zone.
Mm-hmm.
So UTC is a standard universal time zone in which that particular time is stored. Based upon individual country's time zone, it may add hours or minutes into it and
Okay.
show its own time.
All right. All right. So UTC and GMT, are they different in that case? I mean, I'm sorry to push you on that.
I'm not very sure about that, but I think they should be different.
Okay. Okay. For the moment, though, in this example, we are making use of date time as a property which is accepting a value in a UTC format. This value is not going to be shown anywhere on the screen. I'll repeat that again. This value that I have populated for this date time property is not going to be visible anywhere on the screen. This is primarily for the browser. What is expected is this. The browser looks at this value. It would then automatically have that value populated here on line number 17. That value would automatically get populated in an appropriate format on line number 17. At the moment, it doesn't work like that, which is why I have hard-coded line number 17 there. The value on line number 17 is something I have hard-coded. But eventually, this part, this is going to be automatically populated by the browser based on the data that I would have provided here. All right, now this is a feature that is yet to be implemented. For now, though, notice I've used time, I've provided this content, and incidentally, I have also chosen to use this tag called mark. In this example, I have used mark in conjunction with time. That's some usage that I have resorted to. Please do not be under the impression that mark will always be added there. That's something that I have included myself. I have used mark in conjunction with time, but apparently mark can be used anywhere in the context of the document. And what it's going to do is something like this. Let me share the browser view. If you could open this page in the web browser, notice we see a highlighter kind